Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to your Friday night Rangers Rabble. I'm in the hot seat tonight. As you're probably aware, I'm Wilf. I've been thrown in as the last-minute host because Stu's been held up somewhere. With me tonight, I've got Graham. Good evening, Graham. How are you?
All good, mate. All good. It's good to be on a podcast with you, Will. It's been a while, so looking forward to it.
It has indeed. Yeah, nice to see you get back from Manchester in one piece last night.
It was a long day yesterday.
And also with us tonight is James. James, nice to meet you. Good to have you along.
Thanks very much, guys. Obviously, it's the first time I'm getting to meet the two of you, so it's good to get on and obviously see new faces.
Right. Okay. So let's obviously welcome everybody in the comments. The first thing I see is Caroline. So we're playing with injuries again. We'll get to that, Caroline. But yeah, that just seems to be the way of it, unfortunately. Although I think the injuries might be quite strategic. First thing I need to bring up is Sasha the Doug and won the Apple away, which won a fair few people a lot of money at Aintree today. It's my mate's got a little bit of that horse, and he said it's running through it on 16-1. Thanks very much. We'll have a bit of that. So that was quite nice. So thanks for that, Sasha. But anyway, on with the Rangers. Don't forget, folks, if you don't already subscribe, get the subscription button hit. Like the podcast, share it if you're watching it on Twitter, Facebook, all that. We've also got the Patreon that we're trying to get a lot more members for. Loads and loads of content on Patreon. We've got EPL shows, which Graham's quite heavily involved in. That's quite Man United heavy right enough, so that's not really my cup of tea. But anyway, there's Who Are You shows that I do. There's all sorts of good stuff. There's Mel wishing us a good evening from sunny Dundee. We won't mention that game earlier that our son was playing in. I believe he should have been sent off, but that's another story. So, Graham, Ross Wilson, now Director of Football Operations at Nottingham Forest. Discuss.
I'll go back to the start with Ross Wilson. I was very excited when we appointed him. I must admit, I'm not going to change history on that. He came with a good reputation, and I was kind of looking forward to it. I thought he spoke well in his interviews at the beginning, and I watched previous interviews when he was at Falkirk and Huddersfield, and forgot the other team actually who it was. But he spoke well. He seemed to know what he was doing. He always kind of planned ahead. He always made a big emphasis on he liked to forward plan. So I was very excited when we appointed him. Also, it kind of went well at the beginning. We had a good transfer window with Roof and all the kind of players coming in, and we won the league title. So that was great, and everything, the future looked bright. But since then, I don't know if it's all due to him or the club as a whole or budgets, but it's kind of went downhill. His transfer rate is, in my opinion, plummeted. I started to notice and worry about wee things I was hearing, and some like the Aaron Ramsey one, for example, when he was all over the pictures and the videos and taking credit for that, and then when signings don't go very well, he's nowhere to be seen on the statements and stuff like that. So I'm happy we can go kind of take a fresh approach now and hopefully do the due diligence and get the proper director of football in, one that I think could take us on forward.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag with Ross Wilson. There's door on tour. Forest fan here. What's Ross Wilson like then? That's a bone of contention. If you look at our message boards and Rangers Twitter, it's I think the Rangers support in general is quite glad he's no longer with us. As Graham said there, he had an okay start. My problem with him is that he tended to sign players with a history of injury. And James, you've got to think if a player like a Kamar Roof is perennially injured at Anderlecht, he's going to be perennially injured at Rangers. And it's the same with guys like Philip Helder. He would never have been at Rangers. Had he not had a history, an injury record like he had. And the thing that really, really got to me about Ross Wilson and what will be his legacy for me is the fact that we're looking at 7 or 8 players going out of contract in this summer. Surely, as director of football operations, whether or not he said he wasn't involved in the transfers, if he wasn't, fair enough. but surely contracts lay on his lap. So why were so many players, particularly key players, going out of contract at the same time?
That's one of the major things. You're supposed to get these tied up. We let an Ebo go out the door and all, who only had a year's left, a contract left. That for me was a letting him run his contract down, because I believe he's still worth more than £6 million for what we actually got for him. But I agree, it's been a mixed bag. I know he obviously got a fair few quid in for Bassey, Patterson and things like that, but I think the bad certainly outweighs the good.
Yeah, Graham, I think I think James has got a point there. The bad does outweigh the good. The encouraging thing for me that he did was that when Mark Allen was here, we just seemed to players that didn't fit in, we just seemed to pay them off and just say, right, there's your contract, go away and find a club. Ross Wilson didn't seem to do that. Okay, as I say, we've got players running out of contract, but he did get money for. He managed to get money for Jack Simpson. That's got to be an achievement in itself.
Yeah, and I believe he got money as well for the one Allegra as well, who only had loan spells, never made a first team appearance. So I believe they made money on him. It's one of the ones that we were talking just before we came on, that the transparency of his role. That was a big thing for me. For me, a sporting director's got to be in charge of everything involving first team, youth academy and women's team. And like you said, we've never heard what his actual job, if it was in control of that. He came out and said that he wasn't in charge of transfers. But for me, a sporting director hires the scouts and the data analyst team to go and make the signings. So he's got to get the right people in. So the question for me then would be, has he got the right people in? We know we released Andy Scoden from his contract. Did we replace him? We've got John Park, but we hired him, but we never heard anything about him after that. So is he started yet? We don't know anything. So for me, Ross Wilson, if he came out and done maybe at least 4 interviews a year, maybe explained a few decisions in the past 2-3 months, etc., that would help the club and the fans connect a wee bit better. But for me,
James,
when you were saying there about the contracts running out, for me, a sporting director's got to be ruthless, and we've got to have a trigger value for each player. And then if that's met, them a couple of hours, the league we play in, the budgets we've got, we need to make full use of getting money in for our players. So for me, he should have a value on every player. If that's met, then we need to sell and then reinvest in the team, and that's how we can move and improve going forward.
Yeah, James, Graham makes a good point there that Ross Wilson, we never heard from him. We didn't know what his role was. We were saying before we came on air that we found out more in the last 36 hours about the parameters of his role as director of football or director of football operations, or whatever the hell it was they called him, than we ever did in his time with us. To me, that's indicative of the whole hierarchy of our club, really, because there's nothing, but they don't tell us anything. I would put that down to the now departed chairman, because he didn't really come out and say very much. Douglas Park wasn't one for speaking. They said in the summer that they'd be a bit more transparent. And John Bennett came out and did a 2-part interview that we've only ever seen the first part of on Rangers TV, which is quite telling in itself. Do you think, as Graham says, it would help if we actually knew what the parameters of the director of football's job was going forward? Is he in charge of everything? Does he actually have any input in the transfers, or like he says, he didn't sign players? And if he didn't sign players, why was he sitting on Aaron Ramsey's shirt tail when he joined us?
Exactly that. I think it's like, anything in life, it's open up to the Rangers fans, tell us exactly what's going on, and the Rangers fans will back you no matter what. Just tell us exactly what's going on within the club, what Ross Wilson's job was. But as you said, we didn't know if he was signing players. Was he going out and, looking at players, recommending players towards Beale or Gerrard or Gio? But for me, it's just a case of just tell us exactly what he was meant to have been doing. And I think it's vitally important now that we do get the next one correct, because it's going to take a long, long time to get back to actually getting, good players, not even just good players, great players to come into the club to help us take it back to where we actually belong.
So, Graham, as James says here, we need to get the next appointment right. So, do you think that we should continue with the director of football role? Should we go back down that role, or should we maybe reanalyse where we are, come at it at a different angle, or what do you think we should do from here?
I think it's a problem with all British clubs, to be honest. I don't think they use the director of football or sporting director or whatever you want to call it properly the way the Europeans do. That person for me has got to be in charge and kind of forward planning. So they've got to set a philosophy on the club that they want to play, and then they hire a manager that plays that philosophy. They hire the scouting and data analyst team that get players that fit that philosophy. And then there's a higher turnover, or there should be, of managers. And that's why the director of football is there, because he can be long term, and then the clubs kind of can look at a 10-year spell type thing. But I don't think if we're going to use it properly, then yes, I'd like to hire a director of football to come in. But if it's just going to be kind of a job getting paid, we don't know what he's doing, or doesn't come out and communicate with the fans and stuff like that, then I think we're just better trusting Beale and then the scouting team that's there, which after the press conference today, which we'll probably talk about later on, it seems we're doing that anyway. So we could probably save up a wage if we're going to go that way.
Yeah, I mean, go by the press conference today, as you say. Michael Beale said that the heads of department are stepping up, and he'll take a lot of it on himself. James, do you think that's going to be enough? Because that would mean if it was the heads of department that were, doing the basically all reporting to whoever they're going to report to, you have to assume it's going to be Stuart Robertson, the chief executive. Do you think that sort of system would work, or do they need somebody sort of between him and the heads of department, as the director of football is or was?
For me, I think when it comes to transfers and going out and actually signing players, Michael Beale's got to be the main man for me. He's the man that's got to, and I know he can't go out and scout everybody. Obviously, he's got to have like the scouting network behind him, but the be end and end all comes down to Beale. You know what I mean? It's his neck that's on the line. If he brings in a player that he's not went out and watched and stuff like that, it will fall on him. But for me, I think that the director of football and stuff like that, I'm not a big fan of it myself. But I know obviously clubs all over the world are now going down this road. But for me, it's got to be Beale. It's got to be the head man now for me, because if you look back to, me growing up, I've seen Jock Wallace. Would Jock Wallace have signed somebody that he didn't go out and trust or see, same with Walter Smith, Graham Souness, these type of guys? It was their call. And I think Michael Beale has got to be the main man now to actually say, no, I want him or I don't want him.
But for me, Graham, the problem with that is, and James is right, it's got to be the manager's call at the end of the day. But he surely he can't be involved in the entire process, because once he identifies the players, which he's done, I mean, as I understand it, he's identified players which he's now passed on to Ross Wilson, and they've spoke to these players, so hopefully they'll still come in, because he was quite confident that they would. It's a lot more complicated now to sign a player. I mean, in our younger days, if you like, speaking for the older element on the pod tonight, it was a case of one manager phoned another manager and said, I want player X. How much do you want for player X? And they say, right, okay, give us that. They then speak to player X. Player X says, right, I'll take that as a weekly wage. Thanks very much. And the deal gets done. Now it's agents and it's image rights and it's this and it's that. And it's far too much negotiating for the manager just to do himself, in my humble opinion. So I personally think they need somebody there to buffer between the manager and the CEO. As I say, the CEO, we don't know what Stuart Robertson does on a daily basis, but I would imagine he doesn't really have the time to be sitting having a meeting with however many different heads of department is, because again, we don't know that either. Is it half a dozen? Is it 8? Is it 12? Is it heads of scouting? Is it head of transfers? Is it head of this? Is it head of that? Because everything you've got for the men's team, you've got for the B team and the academy, and you've got for the women's team as well. So do you think we still need to bring in somebody, to buffer all that? And as David says here, being an ex-player is not a qualification for the position, because there's loads of people taking the easy option. Christian Erlinger apparently got asked if he wanted it. There's people, saying Davy Weir. To me, they're the lazy option because they know the club.
Yeah, for me, Davy Weir, if we could get him, I'd go all for it. The job he's done at Brighton, he was the kind of getting taught off Dan Ashworth, who for me is one of the best in the business at being a kind of sporting director. He's now at Newcastle, and Davy Weir took over the reins. If we could get Davy Weir, it costs a lot of money, and I think he'd probably be enjoying himself down there as well. So it'd be hard for him to leave Brighton. But for me, I totally agree with what you said. It's a go-between between the kind of CEO and the board and the manager. And the clubs that do it best for me are like your Ajax and Bayern Munich. They've got ex-professionals, but they've went through university and got degrees in sports business and all that kind of stuff. Because you've got to know the kind of transfer fee market, the salary going rates, agents, have a good connect with agents, and know kind of the whole world basically for up and coming talent, all that kind of stuff. So it's an important job if it's done properly. And so Davy Weir for me would be a great shout, but unfortunately I don't think we would be able to get him. Seen a few people talk about Paul Mitchell, who's another one of my favourites. He was at Tottenham, the Red Bull group, and then he's now just leaving Monaco after doing a good job. But it's a hard one for us because our budget, our league, it's quite hard for us to get the best in the business. But it's got to be one that kind of is. It doesn't have to be an ex-player for us. But you say that's kind of lazy, like Nerlinger. I don't really know much about his CV, but it's got to be the right person that can do it all and help the manager out. Like you say, because it's for a manager to be concentrating on training, picking teams, forward planning. It's a lot for him to kind of go and do transfer talks and all that as well. So it does help if it's done properly.
Yeah, a wee comment, James Dalrymple. James, thanks very much for the $4.99 super chat. Absolutely much appreciated. Really helps us a great deal. Just clicked on, so don't know if it's been said. But do you think Matondo should get a start? We'll get to that. We've not got any further than Ross Wilson leaving yet, which I didn't plan spending 15 minutes talking about. But there you go. It's all good. It's all good. So we'll move on. We'll move on from that because what will be with that will be we can't rush it, but we can't leave it too long because the transfer window is fast approaching. It seems that Michael Beale is quite confident of still getting the players that he signalled. I mean, I saw a thing before we move off of this. I saw a thing on Twitter when it was announced that that Wilson was going to Forest, and somebody said, "Well, that'll be all our transfer targets going to Nottingham Forest." I would very much doubt it, unless we had an absolute gem picked out, because we're shopping in Aldi's, and they'll be shopping at least in Waitrose and possibly higher than that, just with the difference in budgets. I mean, even if Forest finish bottom of the Premiership, they're going to be getting over 100 million. You know what I mean? We can only dream about getting money like that from the domestic league. So I don't think we need to worry about that. And I would also imagine there'll be clauses in saying you can't come poaching players off us or poaching our targets or whatever. I mean, there was a couple of things in the chat about Kent going to Forest. It wouldn't surprise me because he's out of contract. He can go wherever he wants. But we'll get back to Ryan Kent in a bit. So, James, I noticed yesterday or the day before that the English football authorities have decided that they're going to ban gaming companies from sponsoring clubs. You know, being shirt sponsors of clubs from I think 2026. Obviously, if the Scottish football authorities bring that in, which at the moment they say they're not going to, but if they do, that would drop us right in the shit because our shirt sponsors are gaming. Are a gaming company.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. It's going to be a hard one because Scottish football does seem to follow English football, especially when they had VAR and stuff like that. It came in after they had got it, but it will drop us, and it'll be a case for whoever it is, like the marketing department or something, to go out there and find a gem somewhere that we can actually get back on the shirts.
So, Graham, do you think that that's something that we'll actively look at? Because I mean, I saw that the quote from the SPFL was that gaming companies put a lot of money into Scottish football, and the clubs really rely on it. So, do you think they will go down the same route as the English clubs? As James says, that we do tend to follow on what they do. We usually follow 2 or 3 years later, but we do normally follow what they do.
Yeah, I think as it stands, they won't want to because obviously it brings a lot of money into Scottish football. You've got obviously William Hill, you've got the majority of them actually sponsoring something to do with Scottish football. So at the moment, I think they'll be planning not to do anything about it. But I think it happened in Europe first and then England followed. And if that's the case, then Scotland will probably have to follow at some point, because I think UEFA and that are trying to get rid of the kind of betting stuff. I've not read too much into it, but from looking from the outside, that's what it looks like. But obviously, it's going to affect us. So again, having a sporting director, the CEO, they should be looking at stuff like this and kind of planning future sponsorships, shirt sponsors, all that. That should be getting looked at probably a rolling cycle of maybe 3-4 years or the contract. So again, that's another thing that should come under that person's job. So hopefully
I disagree with. I disagree with that. I think it should be James Bisgrove is looking into that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
The commercial department, that's the sort of thing he should be doing. But again, it's something. I mean, this could be fairly major for Rangers. They've not come out and said a thing about it. I mean, I can't remember the last time we heard from Bisgrove. You know
true.
And for a while, he was the only person we heard from. Now we haven't heard a peep out of him. So I don't. He's doing an okay job, but since the opened new Emerson House, we've not heard the murmur out of him. So it'd be interesting to know what they're doing with that. But Paul says here he thinks it's the main shirt sponsor. Sleeves are okay, so you could probably jiggle about what you've got a little bit, But we don't know enough about that, so we'll move on from that and get back to something particularly Rangers. And it was interesting that today, on the 14th of April 2023, the season ticket renewals dropped through the door, or into the inboxes, as we say. So there's a bit of an outcry about the prices, the price increases on them. I'm not too fussed, because I realised, obviously, I'm sensible enough to realise there was going to be a price increase, and I heard the rumour it was going to be 5%. And James, my ticket's gone up 5%. I don't know about any other part of the ground. So if it's 5% across the board, which I'd like to think it is, because I can't see why they would put different prices up, different amounts. Do you think that's a fair increase? Do you think they should have left them as they were? Do you think there's any way they could have left them as they were?
I don't think they could have left them as they were. Obviously, if they're looking at whatever targets and stuff like that, it's obviously going to go towards going for these players, because obviously the club relies on the season ticket money coming in. For myself, they've obviously went up. I sit in the Birmingham rear with my daughter. Mine just went up to 486 now, and hers has went up to 132 or something, I think. Something like that. When I had a wee quick look at it at work today. For me, I'll pay it anyway. It doesn't need to get to watch Rangers. I'll pay whatever. Do you know what I mean? To continue to go. But I just hope. I'm hoping that they obviously use it, man. They can obviously get better players in the door.
Yeah. Sharpie, the cost of a season ticket depends greatly on where you sit in the stadium. I sit in CD1. My season ticket for next season is £537. I've got a mate that sits in the main stand front. His season ticket's the thick end at £800. So it's depending greatly on where you sit. My daughter phoned me earlier. Her pal's season ticket is whatever it is, and a friend of hers who sits 20 seats away is £120 cheaper. So I don't quite know how I think they do it by section. I know the club deck it's a CD1's slightly cheaper than CD2, which is slightly cheaper than CD3, and CD4 is ridiculous. I'm not sure how the rest of the stadium works, but I think it has gone up 5% across the board. Graham, do you think that's fair? Do you think that was realistic? Were you expecting them to go up more?
I was personally expecting them to go up, just because I seen last week that a lot of the English clubs, theirs has all went up. So I thought we wouldn't be any different. But 5%, it doesn't seem too much when you look at it down south. I think there was a tweet I seen about Fulham. Their season tickets have went up £300. So, and theirs is obviously London. So I can't imagine what the dearest or the cheapest ticket is for there. So 5%. But I seen somebody in the comments saying no season ticket should go up after a potential your rival winning another potential treble, which I totally agree with. But it's the times, isn't it? The club needs money to come through, and the demand will be there. And I imagine 85% would probably renew it at that 5%. So it's business, but it's not a good thing. You always like to see the club giving back to the fans, and the best way would, in my opinion, would be for us to have a win in Rangers, and then the fact you can put it up at 3%. So hopefully next year,
yeah, Yeah, Des Masson, £5 donation. Thanks very much for that. It's much appreciated. That just helps us get to where we want to be. So thank you very much for that. Don't forget, folks, we've also got a Patreon site. We're over on Patreon, patreon.com/Rangers Rabble. There's loads and loads of other content. And the good thing about Patreon, you don't actually need to see us because it's all audio. So you don't actually need to look at my ugly mug when I'm on it, which is quite good. Yeah, back to the season tickets. I don't think 5% increase is too bad given that everything else is going up by an awful lot of money. I mean, that's not a great. And it's always to me, it's always the same at this time of people complaining it's going up, but it's got to go up even just to keep things level the way they are. Because I would imagine a lot of the services and things that Rangers are having to pay for are probably going up more than 5%. So I think it's quite fair. I didn't realise the gulf and difference between the season ticket prices in different parts of the ground. I mean, some of the prices I've been seeing today are ridiculous, for me. But that's just the way it is. It's difficult because as James says, you'll pay it anyway. There's going to be a demand. He'll pay it for him and his daughter. I'll pay it for me and my daughter. Unfortunately, my daughter's no longer a juvenile, so it's double bubble for me. But that's just the way it goes. She's still a student, so I'll still foot the bill for that. I mean, there's Barry Turnbull. He's in the club deck. He's £100 more than me, so he must have a better club deck seat than me. But still, it just shows you the disparity in the same sort of area of the ground, But yeah, the next thing we're going to get through the door, obviously, is the my years renewals, which is going to be something else. But that'll be something to talk about in a few podcasts time, I would imagine. So we'll spend a wee bit of time now talking about tomorrow's game, because I think that's why we're all here. St Mirren tomorrow. Michael Beale pointed out he's played 31 domestic games, but he hasn't played St Mirren yet, which is ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, we play everybody sort of 3 times before the split, and he's been here for best part of a third of a season, and he's not played St Mirren yet, which is absolutely mental. So, Graham, what do you think what do you know about St Mirren's current form, and what are you expecting tomorrow?
I'm probably the worst person to ask about other teams' form, because I don't really follow Scottish football apart from Rangers, but it's actually the last game I was at Ibrox when Cholak got a double that day. So I'm hoping just for a win, get confidence up, get into the semi-final. I don't really know too much about St Mirren, but as most of us would agree, at Ibrox we should be beating everyone. So I don't really hope to have much of a threat or being put in the back. So there's a part of me that kind of wants to see it's a part of me that wants to kind of see some of the youth players given a shot, but you said just before we come on, Wilf, and I never really thought about it that way. We need the minutes in some of the players' legs to get ready for the semi-final. So I take that back, but it's a game. Just want to see the players go out, perform at their best, and try and. I would like to see a 3 or 4 or 5-0. We've not seen one of them in a while.
Right, James, help us out. You must know a bit about St Mirren, because I don't. I know the square root of nothing about them as well. So it's not really a very good preview pod if nobody knows about them. So
the only reason that I kind of know a wee bit about them was I was watching the news when I was eating my dinner when I came in from my work. So I know they're sitting. Is it third? I think in the league.
No, they're sitting. They're currently sitting fifth.
Oh,
they're 1 point. They're 1 point behind. They're 1 point behind fourth place Hearts, who not that long ago were 10 points clear in third, which is ridiculous. And they're 3 points behind Aberdeen. And they're 3 points behind Aberdeen, who are currently third.
I think Robertson. He's building a good team at St Mirren. He seems to be get them playing some good football. I think he at Motherwell as well. I believe that he was. I used to work with a big guy, Ryan, and he was raving about him, saying that they were playing some good football at Motherwell. And by all accounts, he's got St Mirren playing some good football, and obviously battling for a top 6 position, which is really, really good for a club like St Mirren to be up there battling for in the top 6.
Yeah, I think, Graham, they're almost assured top 6 now. I think with the recent form. I'm sure I hear yesterday that the last 6 games have won 3, drew 2, and lost 1. It's something along those lines. I've not really checked that. So I mean, they are in quite a rich vein of form. I mean, they went to Hearts last week and dismantled them at Tynecastle, costing the manager their job. So they must have something about them.
Yeah, that's actually surprised me. I didn't realise they were doing so good.
Yeah, as Michael says here, Big Curtis May will cause our central defence problems.
He's one of the players that you don't like to come up against. He always seems to kind of put in a performance against us or cause an injury at one of your players, or gets the bad tackles. I think it was one up at Aberdeen when he played with Aberdeen at the time. I think it was a Rabble, I think it was on. But he's one of the players you don't like playing against. St Mirren was always one of the teams I kind of didn't look forward to going away from home, because he used to always score quite early on against us and go ahead. But that happens quite a lot this year. But at Ibrox, I don't see any problems. As long as the players go out with the mentality that there's a semi-final in the horizon, need to put in their best performance, I don't see any problems tomorrow.
Okay. James, do you agree with that, particularly given that what we found out today, that we've got a catalogue of injuries again? Just to refresh everybody, what the manager said when he was challenged in the press conference about injury. Goldson was out. We knew that anyway, because he said last week he wouldn't make St Mirren, but he might make Aberdeen, and he should be back for the semi-final. Take that with a pinch of salt if you want. We've heard it before. Mm-hmm. Also out with Anokas, Yilmaz, Cholak, Wright, Jack and Kent. Now, do you think these are actually genuine injuries, or do you think it's kind of, they're saying they're injured, they're saying they've got little knocks, just to take them out the firing line and give them a wee rest?
I would hope that they're not injured, because obviously that's the kind of guts of your first 11, the players. For me, even anyway, I would have been dropping Ryan Kent anyway after last week's performance. The boy went missing again last week. It's all right turning up against your St Mirrens and stuff like that, but as I've obviously touched, I think after the game against them, that you come to Rangers to play against that mob, and that's what you're rated on when you come to us. There is a lot of obviously players out tomorrow, but the players that are on the bench, this is a chance for them to actually stake a claim for the semi-final now, and to basically say, right, I'm here, I'm going to stand up and be counted now.
Yeah, I think, Graham, as we said before we came on, I personally don't think there'll be that. I mean, there's Paul McGarrigle saying it's a great chance for Beale to rotate and spring a few shocks. The first name I see there, which is spelt wrong, but anyway, I can't see Robbie McCrory starting. I mean, he said today that Robbie McCrory will feature very soon. I can't see it being before Hampden, because we have to win that semi-final and we need some sort of continuity before we do, particularly in defence. I mean, I get that Goldson's going to come back and Suter will probably miss out come the semi-final, but surely we keep Alan McGregor in goals at least until the game at Hampden.
It's a tough one. I don't think it's as plain sailing as that, because the third goal, if we've got a fit McCrory, he could maybe potentially get that ball and stop that. So that's playing in my mind, where I think if we get McCrory this game and the other game before, and then he could potentially, if he gets 2 clean sheets and maybe a couple of impressive saves, I wouldn't mind putting him in the game. He played the old firm at Ibrox when we won 1-0 or 2-0, I think it was. Got a clean sheet that day. He had a couple of good saves for Kyogo, 1-on-1. So I don't think he's done much when he's played for Rangers to not have a wee bit of confidence in him. So I wouldn't be too against that decision. I'm hoping Ryan Jacks he's played a lot of games recently. Beale actually said that in his press conference, that he's played quite a lot. So hopefully it's just taking him out for one and then bringing him back in just to kind of recharge him and give his body a wee bit of rest. But as James said there, I'm not too fussed about Kent missing. Ridvan, that's a worry. We've spent a lot of money on him, and that's him getting another injury. Is this going to be a regular occurrence? So I'm hoping he's back and gets a kind of a lot of minutes in him, so he can get his body up to speed with the Scottish game if he's going to be a future regular going forward. But tomorrow, I don't see, even with the players out, I think, as James said as well, it's a big chance for players like Batondo, Hadji even, to get minutes and press. So I'm kind of looking forward to tomorrow to see a fresh team and see what they can do against St Mirren.
Okay, so James, Graham mentioned the lesser spotted, the Rabbi Matondo. Would you be starting him tomorrow?
Well, I don't know. I'm no I'm not one of his massive fans, I don't think. I'm also not a big fan of Fashion Sakala either, but I think he's been one of our better players this year. He's been one of our most important players this year. So I think I would be starting Fashion either on the left or the right wing tomorrow. But Tondo's, I don't know whether the boy's been carrying an injury, if it's confidence with him. I just don't know, because he came with this glowing report in Germany that he was, I think I've seen a few of his highlights, he was getting the ball in the middle of the park, turning, beating 3 or 4 guys and either scoring or slipping a guy in to score. But it's obviously like Scottish football, you don't get as much room as that, because obviously teams drop that deep that he can't use his pace to get in behind them. So I don't know if it's just confidence with the boy, because you know what it's like at Ibrox, the first couple of kind of runs, if you don't make it right, you don't do it. It's as if the fans are then jumping on his back and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's obviously the guy can't take the criticism when it comes.
Can I just say there, just before I'm not Matondo's biggest fan either. Actually, I wouldn't have signed him personally for what I knew about him before. But to give him a wee bit of a positive side is he's not had many starts, and especially at Ibrox. So I think we've got to give him one kind of last chance and say, like, go out and do something. Because again, we spent money on him, so we need to put him on the transfer window as well if we're going to sell him. So he needs to get minutes so teams can look at him and we can maybe get some money back. So that's where I'm coming from with that one.
Yeah, that's the quandary, Graham. You know, we need to give the guy minutes, because if he comes in and plays well for us, great. We've got to sell a player that we didn't think we had, and if he doesn't, we need to try and get somebody to. We paid for £3 million for him. We need to try and get some return back on that, and we'll not get that if he's not playing games. It's really difficult. I mean, my biggest concern tomorrow is who's going to be up front, who's going to be playing a striker, because for me, I thought Čolak was a shoo-in, but Čolak's injured. So do you think he'll play Morelos, or do you think he'll do what I wanted him to do last week and not play either of the two of them and stick Sakala down the middle? Graham?
For me, sorry. I'm going through a curveball a wee bit. I wouldn't mind trying as Malik Tillman as a number 9. I believe he played quite a lot of games there for Bayern's second team, which played in the Bundesliga 2 or the one below, so it was at a competitive level. So I'd maybe try that just as an option, and it could maybe allow us to get a Matondo or a Hadji minutes alongside Cantwell and Raskin. So that's the kind of way I'm kind of looking at it. Maybe we've got to try stuff, and it's a perfect game for me to try Tillman as our number 9.
Okay, James, do you fancy Tillman as the number 9, or I know you said you weren't a fan of Sakala. Would you like to see him maybe have a wee shot through the middle, or would you just stick with Morelos?
For me, I'd stick with Morelos, because I still think he puts the fear into defenders. I don't care, you know what I mean, whether he's out of form or no, kind of stuff like that. I still think that having Morelos up front, there's more chance we'll score. Maybe no him scoring, but if somebody's more concentrating on him, it frees up space for somebody like a Tillman to kind of burst forward, to get into that type of position. Touching on Tillman going up front, I think I said a couple of weeks ago I wasn't a fan of Tillman going up there, because I don't think the boy's actually found a position at Ibrox yet. It might be that Bill goes with that tomorrow and makes me have egg in my face or whatever, but I think that I want Tillman to come on leaps and bounds a day. I really, really want him to do well, but I think just leave him on that kind of number 10 kind of role now, and even just either, but Morelos up front for me, and Sakala on the wing.
Okay, personally, I wouldn't have Morelos anywhere near it tomorrow, but that's just me personally. I just don't think he's been. Yeah, I think he's been out of form. I would also have dropped Kent, but that's not an issue anymore, because obviously he's injured. So it'll certainly be an interesting team selection tomorrow, and then obviously going forward from that, we've got Aberdeen, then we'll get the semi-final. It's Graham. It's a difficult one, because as we said, be great to give some of the squad players some game time. But as Michael Beale said today in the press conference, we still have to win games of football. Yeah,
I think if Rangers can't beat teams like St Mirren at home with players like Hadji coming in for minutes, Matondo, even like if we see some of the younger ones that I was saying before, like King, Devine, and also sadly probably not Alex Lowry, but it'd be great to see him back soon. If Rangers can't beat teams like St Mirren at Ibrox, then we're doing something wrong. But I wasn't thinking about the point you made about obviously the semi-finals on the horizon. Players need to get up to speed and get their best form going into that. But I think there is still a chance you could maybe make 2 or 3 changes, which we'd like to see, just a wee freshen up, especially after the fans are a wee bit down after last week's result, and it gives them a wee bit of freshness and to cheer the team on, and hopefully see players gather a wee bit of momentum and give us a wee bit of confidence going back into these tough games at Aberdeen and then obviously the semi-final.
Yeah, James, I think we're a bit unlucky because obviously after the cup semi-final we've got the split and the splits against the other teams in the top 6, but our last 2 games before the split are against teams in the top 6, so we've got no respite at all. You know, it's not like we're not playing a Kilmarnock or a Dundee United or one of them, so it is going to be quite tough. And here's a point that Big Harry makes. Somebody said about Hadji, bringing Hadji on to use his pace, and if Hadji's got as much pace as a fat guy with chronic piles, which I think is quite a good description. So what's your take on Yanis Hadji? Does he start tomorrow? Should he be getting game time? Do we look to offload him? Has he got a future at the club?
Well, for me, I've never been one of Hadji's biggest fans. I think he's one of the players that he frustrates the life out of me. I think, folk always say to me in work, but what a pass he made and things, but you didn't have to watch the last 12 passes that ended up miles away from somebody, or the shots out of the bar and stuff like that. He's one of the players that he's a luxury player, but he is, and I'm going to contradict myself here, right? He's one of the players that we probably do need, that is going to try that killer pass, that will try to, obviously, trying to shoot when we're all screaming, but we pass the ball to death, we go side to side and stuff like that. But I think, for myself, I think Hadji would be one of the players I would be trying to offload in the summer. So I would be trying to kind of maybe move him on. The more I would be starting Scotty Arfield. I can't see by Scott Arfield. I think what Scott Arfield brings to the team, that late burst into the box and stuff like that, you can't coach that for me. And I think that's something that the young players should be looking at.
So would you keep Scott Arfield around then? If obviously he's one of the out of contract players, would you give him another year, another couple of years? Would you keep him about the place?
I would give him another year's contract, but obviously say to him, look, you'll not be playing week in, week out. You'll be used maybe sparingly and stuff like that, the last 20 minutes of a game and stuff. If it's not going for us, him busting into the box in the last 20 minutes, need to be able to keep up with that. Do you know what I mean? You look what he done against Aberdeen. He comes off the bench, 2 goals, and we get away from Pittodrie with the 3 points, and didn't look as if we were anywhere near it that night.
Yep, that's actually quite a good segue, Graham. Moving on from the players we might be getting rid of, let's have a wee chat about players that we could potentially be bringing in. Somebody's just put up in the comments, it's Ross County 0, Aberdeen 1, and once again it was Duke that scored the goal, and there's a few people calling for us to go in for Duke. Do you think? Do you know anything about the guy? Do you think we should? I know you're like me, you don't really watch anybody else, but apart from Man United, who I don't watch. But
personally, the game against us, James was just talking about there, Arfield came on and saved us. He started off quite well in that game and also scored a great free kick. So he's got the kind of technical ability, but it's a big step up going for Aberdeen, playing in front of their fans and coming to Ibrox and playing in front of us. So I'd be a wee bit wary of it. Again, it would come down to what the transfer fee was. I wouldn't be paying anything over £1 million personally, from what I've seen. So if they were wanting anything over £1 million, obviously they've got good money for Calvin Ramsey, so they might be looking at that as a kind of standard or a transfer fee that they're looking for. And then, so I wouldn't be paying anywhere near that. So it would be a no for me.
Right, James, would it be a no for you, or do you fancy the boy Duke? Do you think he would score goals for Rangers, or would he be a waste of money, or would you bring somebody else in as a striker? Because we're going to need at least one, possibly 2.
I think depending, as Graham says, on the fee, I wouldn't be going there to Aberdeen and offering them £3 or £4 million, because I wouldn't want to give Aberdeen anything. I wouldn't give them a lick of whatever. My number twos, sorry. I wouldn't be able to go and boost their finances for any reason. But as Graham says, maybe about £1 million and stuff like that. He does look a good player from what I've seen. Obviously, I don't watch a bit like yourselves. I only watch Rangers. So I've not seen enough of him to see. I've only seen him against us, scoring the goals and stuff like that, a free kick against us. But no, I would be think he is a player that I think that he might be on Beale's radar.
Okay, so there's a comment from Finn Fogel. If you want to win trophies, dross like Duke, Van Veen, etc. aren't anywhere near good enough. Now, I tend to agree with that, but I think as a support, we can be quite snobby at times and think, well, you know, players from other Scottish clubs just aren't good enough for Rangers. But let's be honest, that's the sort of market we should be looking at. You know, we've got to be looking around the leagues and seeing what we can get. I mean, Graham, there's been calls in the last week or so, Lawrence Shanklin or the lad Nisbet at Hibs, or you know, do you think that picking somebody up from the Scottish market is the way we should be going, or as James, or you both said, do you think that the chances are the club concerned will just try and hold us to ransom because it's Rangers?
Yeah, I think for me, also we've had successes from Scottish football, but I think the days are kind of almost gone. I think Lewis Ferguson would have been a squad player for us at the price that Aberdeen would have wanted. I still don't think it was value for money. Obviously, he's doing well in Italy, but it's a different step up for belonging to Rangers as well, in my opinion. I just don't think he's better than Raskin, Cantwell, or Ryan Jack for me. So we're spending £3 million for a player that's going to be a squad player, maybe at best. So I think it's got to be the right. There will be occasions when there is the right one, but unfortunately, this is probably the lowest our league's been in a long, long time for me. That's why I don't really watch any of the games, because I think the actual quality is very below standard. And for me, I watch a lot of European football, and I can see better value for money in young players like in Denmark, probably even Holland, countries like that, and even South America, which I believe now, I've kind of looked into it a wee bit, I believe it's actually easier for us to get South Americans and Asians and Africans because they kind of Brexit and work permit stuff. So I've been looking at the kind of markets where you can get good young players and then hopefully start a proper transfer player trading model and buy small, sell big. So I'd be kind of concentrating on that rather than the Scottish game.
Okay, well, finishing up on Duke or Lopez or whatever the guy's name actually is, according to Aldo, there's the stats: 32 matches, 15 goals, 2 assists. That's not bad in anybody's language in any league, to be fair. But James, going back to Michael Beale's press conference of earlier today, when he said that the players that he's earmarked and that he spoke to Ross Wilson about before he left, and that they're quite far down the road on. He says if they manage to come in, you'll see a direct link, and it'll be a very obvious link to him as a coach, which to me would infer that it's players that he's been involved with before. I saw somebody in the comments there said Lyndon Dykes. Do you think that that's a possibility, or would it be somebody else from a club he's been involved with? Be it QPR, be it Liverpool. Somebody in the group chat earlier even said Chelsea and San Paulo. I can't really see it being in, because that was a number of years ago he was there. I can't really see it that being. But do you think he'd maybe be going and plundering QPR, or maybe even going to Villa?
I'd obviously seen that somebody had also put up in one of our chats that they'd be dreaming of people like, I can't even remember the two names that the guy put up. I think was it Cameron or something along the lines that somebody put up.
Lee put a couple of names in from Villa, but I can't remember who they were, and I don't know any Aston Villa players, so I can't. It was Lee. I didn't pay much attention to it.
I would hope that it's no Dykes. I don't rate the guy either. I just think he's one of the players. He's good at a club that just lumps the ball up, and he can get flacones and headers and stuff like that. Whereas I don't think Beale's into that type of football. I know he played him at QPR, I just don't think it would suit our style of play. I think Bale's looking for the striker to be busy and running about and running in behind and stuff like that. So I think it might be players along those lines that he'll be going for.
There you go. Somebody's been in a group chat. It was Willock and Archer. And
yeah, aye.
Graham, do you know anything about these guys? Because I've heard of Cameron Archer, but I couldn't tell you anything about him.
I believe Cameron Archer's playing tonight just now for Middlesbrough. He's on loan from Aston Villa. He's one of Kerr's favourites. He's a good goal scorer. He's played at, I think, under 21 level at England as well. So he's a good player. But my problem and worry is that the budgets, I think it will be your Lyndon Dykes and players like that ilk, rather than these kind of young hot prospects that maybe cost a bit more. So that's my worry. But there's a lot of players like Ethan Laird. He's had at QPR. He's a brilliant young right back. But again, that's not really a priority. But there is players in the team we brought through at Chelsea. He was responsible for quite a lot of their good players like Mason Mount. Also, we're not going to get him. But he was in that. That was the time he was at Chelsea. He kind of coached them. So he's been a lot of the good clubs, Liverpool, like you said. So there's a lot of good, exciting players that he could be looking at. But my problem is the budget and the time that we need to get it done is for also the Champions League qualifiers. So I think it might be kind of quick, easy ones in rather than kind of prolonged chasing players, which was my worry.
Your man Cameron Archer's got himself an assist tonight, so I've just noticed that Middlesbrough's one up. He provided the assist, so there you go. There's probably another 100 grand on his fee or whatever they're going to get from him. But no, just what you said there. The manager alluded to the fact that he's going to be hopefully bringing in players, getting his business done early, because we really need that. Because as you say, the European qualifiers are coming. I think it's beginning of August, so we really need to have them in and embedded in before then. James, are you a believer that rather than signing squad players, which is what we're going to have to do because we're going to have to beef up the squad, do you think we should possibly be looking at promoting some of the youth players on a permanent basis, or do you think it's maybe too soon for the youth players we've got? Bear in mind we've got a few guys out on loan as well.
Obviously, I know the kind of players that I kind of know about for the youth is obviously players like your Lowrys and your Devines and stuff like that are already in and around the first team. For me, I think Lowry is a fantastic young prospect, and I think he needs to start proving now. He's obviously at that age now where he should be knocking on the door now and saying, I want a shot, I want to be here. I know what the young man's gone through just now, and it's obviously tragic. I just hope that he can get back and he is battling down Bale's door, because when he has played for us, he looks at an actual match winner. He's no scared to take a ball, and there's something. I'm obviously going to compare him to somebody here. I think he's got a touch of like the Paul Gascoigne's about him, where he's no scared to take a ball in a tight situation, look up and run at people, and that's what puts the fear of death into defenders, is somebody running at them. And he's got great quick feet, and I think he's a perfect player to play in that number 10 role. Yeah,
Graham, I think James, I agree with James. Alex Lowry's a prodigious talent. He's been really, really unlucky this season. He got that injury after that horrific tackle against Dumbarton in that Challenge Cup game back at the start of the season, when it still mystifies me why he was still on the park deep into stoppage time when we were 7-0 up. And then he comes back from that. Apparently his attitude wasn't too great. They sort that out, and then he has a family bereavement. The guy's had absolutely no luck at all. So hopefully, as James said, next season, in the summer, we can kind of embed him into the first team, give him some pre-season stuff, and get him settled as a first team player. Same with get Adam Devine in there. Is there anybody else in the youth team that you're aware of that you think maybe make a step up rather than going to blow the budget on players just to beef the squad up?
There's one, a midfielder I'd like to see getting a chance next year. He's been on loan at Partick Thistle, is Cole McKinnon. Any time I've watched the B team, he's been one of the best players. I believe it was him that scored the winner at Parkhead last season. I can't remember if it was a cup final or a league game, but it was a late winner. And he's box-to-box midfield. I think he could be a squad player. As long as our problem is, I don't think we give the correct minutes in the correct situations in game time for our young players. There's a lot of players like Kai Kennedy, Stephen Kelly, I believe, that could have had a lot more minutes when we're 2, 3, 4-0 up and comfortable. We've been giving them minutes, but we haven't in the past. So I'm hoping a new change, like next season, we see a Rangers team go out, and especially at Ibrox, being 2, 3-0 up at half time, and we can get young players more minutes and more comfortable in the first team playing at Ibrox. And another one is Zach Lovelace. I think his performances in the B team, I think obviously he's still very young, but if you've ever seen him, he's a man. He's got that kind of Wayne Rooney look about him. He's a man in a boy's age, but I think he's ready for minutes again next season. A good pre-season with the first team. I think that's going to be a crucial pre-season next year, is for fitness-wise and getting to see Lovelace, Cole McKinnon, Adam Devine, another one, and Leo King, getting his confidence up after being out a wee while. Plus, he played a lot of minutes in a lot of heavy defeats, especially in Europe. So we need to rebuild his confidence, because I don't want us to forget about him. So I think he is a super talent as well.
Yeah, go back to Lovelace. Lovelace is massive. I met him after a youth game in Amsterdam before we got beat by Ajax, and he's absolutely massive. And you're right, he needs to get more minutes. But James, I think Graham touches on a good point there, that in the recent past we haven't given young players that have been on the bench minutes when we've been 3, 4 and 5 up, or 2, 3 or 4 up, whatever, at home. Do you think because we've now got 5 subs to use, and we haven't done it this season because we've not been putting teams away, if we can get a team that's more clinical, we can actually give these guys some minutes?
Aye, definitely. And I'm always a great believer that bring these guys on when you're 3 and 4 nothing up, because if they can't do it with no pressure on them, they'll never do it when the pressure is on them, for me. But I totally agree with Graham. We do need to start bleeding in our youth players, because for me, one of my pet hates is bringing a young guy in for another club, giving him game time, making him a player, and then he just goes away. He goes back to his parent club, and obviously then that parent club then going to make millions off him. But no, it's time that we also start to bleed worrying young players into the team now.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I watch a bit of the B team when I can. It's difficult for me from up here, but I do watch a bit of it when I can. And we won't get started on the fixture clashes, because that really grinds my gears when the games are all getting played at the same time. That really annoys me as well. But anyway, that's another thing. Also noticed today that the upcoming Youth Cup final has been announced as being on the 3rd of May. And as per, it's not going to be open to supporters, because they just can't be bothered paying to police it, which I can understand. Which is disappointing, because it's good for the kids. I mean, I was lucky enough to be at the B team game at Ibrox when in front of a fairly healthy crowd. And okay, yeah, we got shown up a bit, but it's still good for the players to be playing in that sort of environment, that sort of atmosphere with those sort of crowds. So that's a bit disappointing, but we'll touch on that a bit nearer the time. Hopefully we can get a bit of a presence because of the support of all the guys on here and the guys on Patreon. Hopefully we can maybe get a wee media invite into that and at least get to cover the game. So that's us touching up on the hour. So it's I thought we'd maybe struggle to get an hour out of this, but I think we've done really well. So before we go, guys, we need a score prediction for you from tomorrow, and in true Rabble fashion, a first goal scorer as well, please, Graham.
I'm going to go with 3-0 and Malik Tillman first goal scorer.
Okay, and James?
I'll go 4-0 and Fashion Sakala first goal scorer.
Okay, can't argue with that. And I'm not going to give you a prediction, that's why I'm the host.
I was going to say, I guarantee it'll be Rangers, a scoreline, opposition 0.
It's got to be the opposition now. Rangers don't concede goals. They really don't concede goals. It would be actually nice to keep a clean sheet for a change. But if I'm pushed, I'll agree with James. I'll go for 4-0 to Rangers. First goal scorer, just to make up for last week, John Suter. There you go, with a wee header. So there we go. We'll have a bit of that. I actually fancied him for a goal last week when I knew he was playing, because he likes scoring against them, but unfortunately that didn't go too well. Anyway, that's us for tonight. As I said earlier, folks, we've got a lot more content over on Patreon. Have a wee, just stick Rangers Rabble into your Patreon search engine and you'll find us. It's only £3 a month or something like that, which is great. You don't need to look at us, it's all audio, so you can listen to it while you're running or cooking or doing whatever it is you do. If the YouTube's your thing, great. We'll be back on Monday. Martin promises me the phone in will still be up and running on Monday. So that'll be good. Get yourself on the phone lines for that. All that's left for me to do tonight is to say, Graham, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. I enjoyed it. It was good to be back on with you, Wolf. And it was good to meet you,
James, thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, guys. It was good to meet. It was good to meet you.
And to everybody in the chat, thanks a lot for coming along. Don't forget, spread the word to folk that aren't believers. And here's to a good win to the Rangers tomorrow. And we'll speak to you soon. Cheers.